Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Turning the Mirror podcast. This is where we bring you the reflection of politics and governance across our country, Kenya. This is Owoth Kaboko, together with my co-host, Olengo Kwach. And today we want to look into this man, Matiang'i, Fred Matiang'i, a man who has been looming across the country, people are speaking about his presidential bid 2027. And there's so many factors that must be considered. He has his strengths and weaknesses. And today we are focusing on what can bring Matiang'i down. What do you think about Matiang'i, the bulldozer?
Matiang'i, the man, is a man to watch. Of course, for him to actually even be seen as a strong presidential candidate. Remember, he never talked about it before. But it is during the Gen Z protests that Kenyans were desperate, the young people were desperate, and as a result, they were thinking of a better solution to these problems. And therefore, they called on Matiang'i to come through. And I think Matiang'i just answered the call of the young people, and therefore he's therefore willing to run as a president in 2027. But then now taking time, because with the time now things are trying to unfold, many other candidates are coming over, and the Gen Z themselves are also mentioning other names of other possible candidates. And remember, with the Gen Z, they are keyboard warriors. And under the keyboard, they also do a lot of research. And therefore, with the saying, internet never forgets, they even come over and bring several clips from several years ago. And therefore, a number of things might affect Matiang'i's presidential bid.
Matiang'i came into the limelight across the country when during Uhuru Kenyatta's administration, the Jubilee administration, he served as the head of ICT, to education, then to interior. And there's so many things that he did and that made the people of Kenya know about him. Speaking about these things one by one, you know that when he was serving as interior, there are so many things he did that critics are speaking about. How can this influence his presidential bid?
Of course, to our audience out there, we've talked about the best things and the good things Matiang'i did to warrant actually the call for Gen Zs to bring him back to bring him so that he becomes the presidential candidate. And therefore you can look here in our channel and you'll see that story. But now back to your question, you know Matiang'i as the head of interior. Number one, we had extrajudicial killings, which were going on across the country. And it even formed the basis of the campaigns of 2022. And you remember now the current regime, when they were still campaigning to be elected into office, they were speaking about they'll never again allow Kenyans or allow the extrajudicial killings to go on within the Kenyan space. And that was really touching people because several bodies were found in Rivalry. We had several, some of the terrorism attacks around. And what really touched people a lot is actually that there were extrajudicial killings. Now, apart from the terrorism, because the terrorism attacks or the terrorist attacks were at times tried and controlled by the then government. But now what touched people during that regime, the extrajudicial killings, the government never had the best explanation or even offered the best solution to such problems. And therefore, some people also died who were seen as the critics of the then government. Remember, as the interior CS, we also had elections in 2017. And during that time, we had Jubilee run against NASA. And so when NASA won and Jubilee stole the elections, the case taken to court, and then the court nullified the elections, and they were supposed to go back to elections. NASA boycotting these elections and now rallying people to go to the roads so that the then government now, which was in place, could be forced out by protests, by means of civilian protests and the civilians taking back power in their hands. I see a Fred Matiang'i movement that really forced people out of the streets. We had police that were so brutal. There was police brutality. We had Matiang'i defending those very police brutality incidences. We had Matiang'i who actually suppressed the opposition voices. And remember Miguna being exiled and taken to Canada.
Yeah, sure.
All that process, Matiangi was at the center of all this as the CS for Interior. We even had the mainstream media shut. The Citizen, KTN, among other mainstream media, which actually did broadcast the swearing in of Raila Odinga as the people's president then. We had these media stations shut, and all that was under the watch of the man Matiangi.
Okay.
So with all these, because remember, we've just said that internet never forgets, and we've already had those clips coming back, surfacing online, and people are talking about this man was a dictator. He did this when he had power, and therefore he's not best suited for this. And other people also see Matiangi as a serious dictator. Of course, we have a good number of Kenyans talk about Matiangi the dictator, who are saying that we need a good dictator who can dictate development, who can dictate the good things for the country.
The progress
but
of the
then
country.
we also have people who are worried about his dictatorial nature, because the bulldozer and all those names came as a result of his nature. And as a dictator who also doesn't love criticism, it is very possible for him as the president, who is a dictator, to ruthlessly deal with his critics.
You know, a president who hates criticism is not good for democracy, sure.
Yes, yes.
And again, when we look into the coalition that Matiangi is now like part of, we are not sure because there is no document. We don't know what will unfold next.
Yes.
But seemingly, he has joined forces with the likes of Kina Gachagua. We have the likes of Kina Kalonzo and Martha Karua and all these people.
That group, yes.
You know, most of them have declared they will be running for presidency, and Matiangi is also here. Will this coalition affect his bid?
Of course, that can also affect his bid,
Yeah.
because remember, initially, he was coming with a party. Is it UPA? The one being led by the Nyamira governor. That is what actually people saw as his possible party. And then after some time, we saw Jubilee Party endorsing him as their presidential candidate.
Yeah.
So he's here, he's supposed to decide on a specific political party he'll be running on. Because remember, Jubilee, in Kenyan context, all political parties are tribal. In as much as they can be seen as national parties, but all these political parties are tribal.
Yeah.
ODM is meant for a specific group, UD a specific group, and all that. So Jubilee is also meant for a specific group. And UPA also meant for now the group where Matiangi comes from. So he'll either have to decide
And Gachagua is also
which,
planning
yes,
to have one.
yes, which party he'll be going with. Again, number two, in this coalition, we have bigwigs. We have Kalonzo, who has been the vice president before in the government 2008 to 2013. We have Gachagua, who is just immediate former deputy president.
Yeah.
His case is still very active in court, and therefore we don't know which direction it will take, because if the courts find it out that the impeachment wasn't done in the right way,
Yeah.
then he will be eligible to run for office. Then we also have people who are within, who have interests like Martha Karua, who has run for president before.
Previously.
In 2013, he ran for president. 2022, she was the running mate of Raila Odinga. And then we have Matiangi, who was just a CS.
Yeah.
Yeah, though seen as a big wigs now in the Kenyan politics, but remember Gachagua has also used the term, tutamtafuta yeye, atakuja tukae chini, tuone analeta nini.
Then we make an agreement.
Yeah, we make an agreement.
Yeah, we see who is who.
And therefore, at the end of the day, when these coalitions are being made, more so coalitions which involve several parties, at the end of the day, when they are deciding on the presidential candidate, or rather the flag bearer, they always look at the person with the most following.
Yeah. They will ask Matiangi, what are you coming with?
What are you coming
What is your
with?
base?
What is your
What
base?
is Matiangi's base?
Matiangi's base as of now, to be sincere,
It's not something we are sure about.
to be sincere, we cannot be sure.
Okay.
But what I can tell is that, because if you look at how things are unfolding, the Kisii region are getting out of ODM, and it is very much evident.
Yeah.
So it means the Kisii will back Matiangi.
As the
But then
person.
if Maraga runs, then the Kisii will
Then-
kind of be confused to make a decision between Maraga and Matiangi.
Yeah.
And then again, Matiangi might also have a base on the young people who might be looking at him differently without looking at the other issues we've talked about. But now looking at Gachagua, by the time we are getting to 2027, maybe he would have managed to bring Mount Kenya region together. Kalonzo Musyoka, as usual, always has his base the eastern part of Kenya, and it will be a tough thing because Eugene Wamalwa, for now, he doesn't have a strong base, but is trying to grab the Western Kenya, which through the help of the likes of Natembeya, Salasia, PK, and all that, he might actually, at the end of the day, maybe bring that Western Kenya, all the Western counties together to support his party, the DAPK.
You know, I'm really wondering if a man like Kalonzo will give up to Matiang'i, that Matiang'i runs, then he just becomes part of the coalition.
If Matiang'i turns out to have the most numbers, then he would just shelve his ambitions and maybe run under Matiang'i.
Do you think he has something to present?
My main problem here is, my main challenge, the biggest challenge I'm seeing is, if Matiang'i comes in as the presidential candidate, automatically we'll have the mountain interested in fronting a candidate, or rather a vice president. If they agree to give Matiang'i the ticket as the flag bearer in this coalition, then we'll automatically have the mountain, because remember the people like Rigiji, they're so much interested in knowing what is our share as a region, and therefore automatically they'll be pushing for the mountain, which also have a good solid base when it comes to voting. The numbers, and they'll be pushing for a vice president. So I doubt, or a deputy president rather. So I'm wondering if at all they agree to give Matiang'i the ticket as the flag bearer. Mount Kenya is here pushing for deputy president. Then where will we have Kalonzo? What role will we have Kalonzo play? Not unless if he again accepts that he's now shelving his ambitions and maybe is now not interested in becoming the president, and so also accepts not to run as the deputy president, and then maybe they talk about the prime cabinet secretary or the prime minister if they'll change the constitution.
Then that means interesting things are yet to unfold. And again, you mentioned something at first, that the country got into a situation where we were like desperate for a leader. So people, the Gen Zs especially, were just looking about the country, that who can we spot that we can front as our leader. Then Matiang'i's name came on board, and people were just recalling how strict he was to fix things up, because when he was part of education, we saw there was no cheating.
Of course,
in
he performed.
Education. He performed.
He did perform.
Then people thought that this can be a person we can front. And again, there are so many leaders that have come on board, which have also, their names have been mentioned by the Gen Zs. We have people like Okia Mtata, we have Maraga, we have even Gen Z leaders like Morara, a millennial, and again, people are just looking across these different leaders, and politics is also unfolding differently.
And others are yet to come.
Others are yet to come. So, does this mean that Matiang'i's wave, it doesn't find balance somewhere?
As of now, it doesn't find balance. But you know, Matiang'i is not in the country. So of course, if just the name Matiang'i is trying to shake waves across the country in his absentia, so we just need to look at Matiang'i when he comes back, because he's coming back, and what he will do after will determine how much force he will have when it comes to the Kenyan politics. So if he comes back weak, automatically his name might not be felt as much. Because right now people are just speculating his next move, and we even have those within the coalition, the Gachagua wing, talk about him. So his name is much frequent. So if he comes, it depends on the force and the direction he's going to take. Remember, he can also come and decide not to go with any other coalition, or can form a different coalition. So whatever he does after he's back in the country will determine exactly the force behind him, and will determine whether or not he will run into office. Because after all, of all the presidential candidates, 99% are not saints. 99%. When I'm saying saints, of course, no human is a saint.
Of course.
But when I'm saying are not saints in this context, I'm saying that all of them, 99%, has a past that doesn't really align to the people-based interests. And at times, they suppressed the people's intentions.
You know, Matiang'i also has a lot of cases that he should be answerable when he comes back.
Very true.
In the courts of Kenya.
Yes.
Will that also affect his presidency?
If those cases are active until the period when now the candidates are submitting their names and interest to the IBC, then it might affect his presidency, because the IBC might not actually at the end of the day approve his candidature, and therefore he might not run. Remember 2022 we had several candidates who presented their intentions to run, but at the end of the day some of them, like Jimmy Wanjigi among others, were dropped for reasons based on the IBC of actually they were in the public, others were because of academic papers, others, and we even had Mike Sonko who wanted to run as the governor for Mombasa. We had IBC deny him the chance to run because of the pending case, and actually the fact that he was impeached as the Nairobi governor back then in just after the 2017 elections. And therefore we might have such cases as long as they are still very active in the corridors of justice, and depending on the weight they hold when it comes to humanity and the properties around humanity, then that might affect his bid.
And we should also expect that his opponents will be holding to that to bring him down. And again, to our audience, you can also share your thoughts in the comment section. You can share your recommendations, what you think, and what you really think about the man Matiang'i. Do you support him? And what do you say about these other candidates? And ensure you keep connecting to us by subscribing to the channel, liking this video, sharing with your friends, even family, and the people who you know that may have interest on this. Welcome back again next time. Thank you.